I've cleaned that building for 4 years and no one's ever said my name right. Isabel Rivera, 3 syllables, not hard, but most days I'm cleaning lady, her, or just ignored entirely. I don't say anything. I clock in at 5:45 a.m. and clock out just after 2 p.m., pushing my cart from one gleaming corner of the biotech tower to another, quiet and careful. Because God help you if someone from the executive floor thinks you're too present. My daughter, Sophia, is in high school now, college-bound if we can stretch the scholarships and my shifts enough. My father lives with us too, ever since his second stroke. I've built a life in the margins, and I've learned to stay invisible, because being seen, really seen, in this world, it never ends well. That's why I froze when I stepped into the 23rd floor boardroom that morning to take out the trash, and the CEO himself, Greg Wellman, turned to his colleagues and said, diversity hires. They're everywhere these days. And they laughed. Not loud. Not for long. But enough. If you've ever been humiliated just for existing in someone else's space, hit like and subscribe. I still replay every word. At first, I wasn't even sure he meant me. I was dressed in gray scrubs with a name tag, holding a plastic bag and pushing a squeaky bin. How could I possibly be part of their world? But then I saw the way his eyes lingered on me, like I tracked mud into a cathedral. I'd been told to go in because the meeting was ending and the room was scheduled for a client visit in 20 minutes. So I walked in like I always did, quiet, fast, head down. But instead of letting me slip through, Greg had to make me the punchline. A prop and some twisted little joke about the very idea that someone like me could share air with the powerful. I felt it immediately, the burning in my cheeks, the heat spreading down my neck. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. My English is good, but my pride was caught in my throat, and anyway, what was I going to do? Clap back at a CEO with a room full of executives watching? The risk wasn't worth it. I knew how this game worked. If I snapped, I'd be unprofessional. If I cried, I'd be too sensitive. If I reported it, it'd be my word against a man who donates to cancer research and has a leadership excellence plaque in the lobby. So I did what I always do. I lowered my eyes, stuffed the trash bags, wiped the table, and walked out like nothing had happened, even though something very much had. In the elevator, I stared at my reflection in the steel wall. My hands were shaking. I pressed them together to still them, but the silence in my chest was louder than any laugh. I kept hearing it again and again. They're everywhere these days. Like we're bugs. Like we're some infestation. That day I skipped my lunch and sat in the supply closet, lights off, just to breathe. I didn't cry. I didn't curse. I didn't even pray. I just sat there feeling like all the invisible weight I carry had finally collapsed on top of me. Not just the weight of that one moment, but of every little slight. Every time someone walked past without looking me in the eye. Every time I was told, not that bathroom. Every time I cleaned up after their catered meetings without even being offered a leftover plate. And I thought of Sophia. I thought of what it would mean if she ever heard that laugh. If she ever looked at herself and wondered if she was too brown, too accented, too poor to be worth respect. I didn't tell anyone what happened. Not that day. Not the next. Because people like me, we don't complain, we cope. We survive. And I thought that was enough. Until someone else decided it wasn't. I didn't go looking for justice. I went back to work the next day like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't been humiliated in front of people who thought I was too dumb to understand their cruelty. I cleaned the same bathrooms. Emptied the same bins. Pushed the same cart past the same executives who still didn't know my name. But something had changed in me. Some quiet crack in the walls I'd built to keep myself numb. I was jumpier now. I flinched when people raised their voices. I kept my head down lower. And when I stepped onto the 23rd floor that Friday, something in me curled up the second I saw Greg's name on the conference schedule. I took the long way around. That's where I ran into Janelle, a young woman in HR who always smiled and didn't just pretend not to see me. She stopped me and asked, "Hey, are you okay?" I must have looked startled, because she quickly added, "I was in the hallway Tuesday." I heard what he said. I tried to laugh it off, said it was nothing, said I didn't want to cause trouble. But she shook her head. "It wasn't nothing," she said. "And you didn't deserve it." Those words hit harder than Greg's joke. They were heavy because they were kind, and I hadn't realized how long it had been since someone had spoken to me with real care in that building. She told me quietly that there were cameras in the boardrooms. Every executive space had them now, with audio, for compliance and transparency. She'd already flagged the incident as a concern in a general ethics log, but hadn't named me. "If you want to do something," she said gently, I can help. My heart started racing. What if this made it worse? What if I lost my job? But she didn't push. She just gave me her card and said, "If you change your mind, I'm here." I went home that night and barely touched my food. I watched my daughter do her homework at the kitchen table, headphones on, confident, full of fire and ideas about her future. And I thought, how could I stay silent when I'm supposed to show her how to stand tall? That weekend, I texted Janelle. One word. Okay. Monday morning, she invited me to a small HR office tucked in the back of the second floor. The VP of Ethics, Anita Desai, was waiting with her. I expected cold formality. What I got was quiet, direct compassion. Anita didn't ask me to explain. She played the clip. Greg's voice. The laughter. The pause after his diversity hires comment, followed by my silence. Like the whole room had decided I wasn't human enough to deserve a reaction. I couldn't even breathe listening to it. Anita turned off the monitor and looked me in the eye. "You are not invisible," she said. "And you are not overreacting." I told her everything then. All the small humiliations I'd been swallowing for years. The snapped fingers, the doors closed in my face. The time someone told me in Spanish to hurry up like I was a child. It poured out like water from a pipe that had finally burst. And she listened. She nodded. She wrote things down. When I finished, I was sure she'd thank me and tell me they'd look into it, and then nothing would happen. But instead she said, "Greg's not the first. But I promise you, he will be the last." The next few days moved fast. Quiet emails. Closed-door meetings. I saw Greg twice. Once in the parking lot, once in the elevator, and both times he looked like he hadn't slept. And then, just like that, an all-staff email, effective immediately. "Gregory Wellman is no longer with the company. We thank him for his service." I stood in the break room and read it 3 times. No apology, no mention of me. But he was gone. And even though I still felt nervous every time I saw a suit walk past, something had shifted. People looked at me differently. Not with pity, with awareness. A few even said hello. But the most shocking moment came when Anita called me back up and asked if I'd be willing to do something bigger. "We're holding a town hall on workplace culture," she said. "We want someone to speak who's actually lived it." I almost said no. But then I remembered Janelle's voice and my daughter's eyes, and that laugh that echoed through me like a slap. And I said yes. The morning of the town hall, I ironed my best blouse 3 times. It was pale blue, just like the one my mother used to wear when she went to church, and I remember thinking maybe if I dressed like I belonged, I wouldn't shake so much. I still brought my work scrubs in a plastic bag, just in case they'd changed their minds. Just in case someone stopped me at the elevator and told me, "This isn't for you." But no one did. In fact, when I reached the conference hall, Anita met me at the door herself. "You're right on time," she said with a smile that wasn't performative, not forced. "Come sit up front." And that's when I realized, this wasn't just a seminar. This was every employee in the building, from the tech developers and marketing team to the sales execs and lab researchers. The room was packed. They had to bring in extra chairs. The lights were dimmed except for the spotlight on the podium. And somewhere in the second row, I saw Janelle, giving me a small nod of encouragement that settled something wild in my chest. Anita opened the session with a few words: safe, corporate, the kind you'd expect from someone trying not to spook investors. She spoke about culture, about respect, about the recent incident without naming names. And then she said something that made the room go still. "We talk a lot about giving people a seat at the table, but sometimes we forget the people who clean that table." That's when she turned to me. "Isabel Rivera, will you join me up here?" My heart nearly stopped. I stood up, knees unsteady, and walked past rows of people who never used to notice me. I passed a man who once stepped over my mop bucket without an apology. A woman who once asked me, "Do you even need a last name on your badge?" And now they were all watching as I stepped into the spotlight. I didn't have a speech. Anita told me to speak from the heart. So I did. I told them what it felt like to be invisible in a place where you leave fingerprints on every surface, but no one ever learns your name. I told them how, for years, I've been cleaning up after people who looked through me like I was fog on a window, something to be wiped away, not seen. I told them how it felt to be humiliated, not by accident, not with malice even, but with assumption. That I would take it, that I had no recourse, that someone like me would never speak. I told them about that morning. How a single sentence, they're everywhere these days, echoed through me more than they could imagine. How it wasn't the first time someone made me feel like a joke, but it was the first time someone laughed in my face and called it culture. I told them about being a mother, about wanting better for my daughter, about how I almost stayed silent, but didn't, because someone like Janelle refused to let me disappear. And then I looked out across the room and said something I didn't even know I'd been holding inside. If you only stand up when it's easy, then you're just sitting in privilege. You don't get to claim allyship in silence. The room went quiet. Not an awkward quiet. A heavy, listening quiet. You could hear someone's pen click. Someone shifted in their seat. But no one looked away. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. But I spoke like someone who finally understood the weight of being heard. I ended by thanking the people who had believed me, and by asking the ones who hadn't, why it took a tape for my word to matter. Why it took a man getting caught to finally get consequences. Why janitors, cafeteria workers, receptionists, people who hold buildings together, have to endure so much just to be allowed dignity. When I walked back to my seat, the applause didn't come right away. It built, slow and uncertain. Then it grew, and people stood. Not all of them, no, but many. Even some who hadn't looked at me in years. Janelle had tears in her eyes. Anita mouthed, "Thank you." And for the first time in that building, I felt not just tolerated, but respected. The next week, they announced a new role, Cultural Equity Advisor. It wasn't a gimmick. It came with real input, real meetings, real pay. Anita told me they needed someone who had seen the cracks in the foundation, who knew what exclusion looked like up close. I accepted. I still do part-time cleaning shifts, my choice. I'm not ashamed of that cart. It got me here. But now I sit in meetings with VPs and HR reps, helping build training programs, shaping inclusion policy, and yes, making sure the janitorial staff are in the room when those decisions are made. Greg never apologized. I didn't expect him to. But I hear he tried to get a job at another firm, and someone leaked the tape. That laugh, the one he thought no one would care about, is what cost him his golden parachute. That's not revenge. That's the truth catching up. And the next time someone like me walks into a room mid-meeting, I hope people don't look away. I hope they look up, because you never know who's watching, and you never know who might be next to speak.